Hello, everyone. We are going to be talking about patches today. Now, the funny thing was, when I was describing or coming up with this class, was being asked to make little patches for 18-inch dolls. So little tiny patches. So that's where I came up with this idea. And they were, of course, for different. I wasn't doing fruits. I was doing the little Girl Scout, Bluebird, whatever patch thingies for the doll to match the dress. So that's what I was working on. But anyway, patch day. Roger, I'll get back to patches. Yes, today we are going to be talking about patches, and I was specifically talking about the little patches because, like I said, these are they're a little bit bigger than an inch. I wouldn't say I didn't want to make them any smaller than this, simply because that was going to get the detail of anything that you make this small really has to be simple. You can't have a lot of shading and a lot of stuff at this size. Otherwise, you're going to be stitching forever. Each one of these took maybe less than 12 minutes to stitch, and they are the fabric patches. So there's no backing. There's just water-soluble stabilizer. That's all I stitched these on. One layer of fibrous water-soluble stabilizer, rinsed it out. Perfect. These were great for using my scraps. Things like this, as freestanding earrings. That's how I use my water-soluble scraps, because I use that little dorky hoop and stitch them out fine that way. Now I'm going to walk you through my process because I said that I was working on patches at this size for a different project, but I started out really wanting to show you how to digitize something this small, because my thought process when I started it, it didn't quite work. I had some challenges, and I thought I'd share those with you. So let's pop on into the software so that I can. This is my little patch. Now I have it set up in my little 40 by 60 hoop. So it may look big, but that's because I actually have it set up in the hoop so that when I send to the machine, I know exactly what the size was. So we're going to work with the lemon because even though I did a whole bunch of other fruits, this was a lot to learn on just this one little lemon. So we're going to go from here. I'm going to start with a brand new design page, and it opens up into my hoop, which I had set to the 4x4 hoop. And this is important. This is one of these bits of information. It was an aha moment for me because did not need to click on the library. So-and-so, you got me hooked on the libraries. I'm going to go into create mode. So I'm going to go into create design files, and I'm going to work in StitchArtist Level 2, just so that I have fewer buttons here, but it allows me to open up SVG files. Okay, so if you have StitchArtist Level 1, you don't have this vector button. Level 3, you have this vector button, and you have a whole bunch of other buttons. So I'm just going to work in Level 2 for now. So I click on the vector button, and I need to browse to the location of the artwork, the SVG files on my computer, wherever you have them saved. I happen to be in the SVG file for this session, and the one I'm going to open here is the lemonade file, which is this little lemon, because that's the interesting one, or the one that I wanted to work in first. So I clicked on open, and the first thing it does is that it opened at a very large size. And that's because really SVG files don't actually have sizes in them, or they do, but it was sized bigger for this hoop. It's a scalable vector graphic. So what this means, it allows you to size it to the size that you want. Now, as you can see, it's larger than my hoop. And that's why it's important to actually look at your hoop on the screen when you're digitizing, because this actually has major significance. Okay, so I'm going to hold down my shift key, grab a corner, and size it so that it fits my hoop. And I'm going to tell you, I didn't have patches in mind when I digitized this. So I digitized it at this size. So we're going to go from there, and then I'm going to show you what this is one of the reasons why I tell you to digitize small and then get bigger. Okay? Because you're learning 2020 hindsight here. Okay. So one of the nice things that when you bring in a vector image, like an SVG file, it's already drawn as objects in our object list here. So if you notice here, it has a whole bunch of objects. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. That's just the way it goes. The reason it's good is because, okay, it's already drawn. I don't have to draw a lemon. It's a simple shape. But if you think about what this lemon looks like, I'm just going to go back here so we can actually kind of look at this guy. It has, in order to create this design, okay, I need to have certain shapes in it. These are the shapes that the SVG file gives me. Now, an SVG file, in order to make a black outline on something, they have to have this outer shape, which is this large one here with what little knots on it. And that would be your black vinyl. And then the shape on top of this smaller one, I'm going to change the color to be a lemony color and just put a fill stitch in it. This is how you would make an outline on a vinyl shape. This is not something that I would embroider. If I want to put an outline around this, that's not how you do it. And you can't think, oh, I got to put a hole in this. Because that's not what you need to do. Embroidery is very, very different than vinyl, than paper crafting. Yes, we have objects, but they're treated completely different. You do not, and you would not, put a hole in this outside shape to create that skinny little shape to create an outline. That's not how it's done, okay? If we want this yellow lemon here, and we wanted a satin outline around this, we could probably use this satin, this fill here, this big shape, and we would put a satin border around it. And what that does, if you notice right off the bat here, do you see there's little tiny gaps in here? That is because I'm going to turn off my stitches so that we can see the objects. And that's one of the reasons why the eyeball gets pushed in and pushed out, is because this toggles stitches. So that yellow shape, that's my fill, which means the fill stitches can only come up to this part. And this black line, that's the outline shape, which I put the satin border, and that satin border I put at 3.5 millimeters. It still didn't cover. So if you want to use these shapes, you have to adjust. You have to move either the nodes from the outside in or the nodes from the inside out so that they kind of match on here. Whoopsie, you don't want to move the angles, you want to move them in. Now, if we notice here, I'm moving, if you can see that line where it's moving here, I'm moving my outlines, whoopsie, and this one had multiple nodes, which happens with SVG files, so I'm just going to delete one by double clicking on it. I'm pretty much moving this right on top of the other line. But do you notice that that satin border of this one is right in the middle of that? So a lot of times what we do when we want to basically create what we're doing manually, can you move each one of these? Yes. In fact, that is how I did mine, because I was, I don't know, I was in an insane mood at the time. And that is just, I said, well, I'll just move them all in. Now, for the lemon, that was kind of silly, but for some of the other ones that have multiple shapes that had the big outline around it, it made more sense. Like the tomato, you had the bottom of the tomato, you had to move that out, and then you had to move the leaves out. So it was it was different. But for the lemon, what I could have done or should have done is delete that satin border. Okay. Select this fill. Go to copy and paste. Make sure I have that selected. And I'm going to go to my color and I'm going to change this back to my black somewhere. That works. And change it to a satin border. That automatically, now that's because I wanted that look of that chunky outline. I wanted that style graphic. I didn't want it a single running stitch outline. This, because I wanted that satin outline, and let me turn off 3D so we can see our stitches. Can you see how that's the fill underneath is going halfway underneath the satin border? That's ensuring that you're going to get coverage of that fill and that satin. So that's really kind of important to pay attention to when you're doing things like this. Okay? You have to make sure you're getting that overlap of your sections. Otherwise, you end up with gaps. Let me turn my 3D back on so we can actually see these stitches. Now, the rest of these guys here, I turned this one into a satin column. So that's this guy here. Because what would have happened if I turned this into a satin border? If I click on satin border, can you tell already, oh no, Lisa, don't do that. If you do satin border, do you see the border on this, the outline? That's exactly what's going to happen. It put a satin border all the way around that shape. Now, if that's, let's change that color so you can actually see what it looked like. Just a lighter color. You see it? It does satin border. It's just basically like put a hole in the middle. Well, no, it actually overlapped it. If you're going for that style, that's a great idea, but that's not what we want. That's not a satin border for that. This, let me hit undo to get back to my original shape here. This, I want to fill this in with a satin column. So if I hit the satin column button, and it's the weird color, that's okay. It automatically fills it with a satin stitch. This is what happens when you're in level 1 and you assign the satin column. I'm in level, and is it perfectly okay to leave it this way? Absolutely. If it looks good to you, it's going to stitch out fine. But sometimes you saw those extra nodes that I was moving and I said, oh, I have to delete this. Well, sometimes that happens when you do this. And when you resize it after the fact, things go shooting out all over the place because nodes are in control. So what I do is as soon as I assign satin column, I immediately go over to the little button here that says add inclinations. Immediately. This is something that I do in level 2. So, and it's something that all level 2 people should do. Click on satin column. I don't care what it looks like. I'm going to add my own inclinations. If it looked good, yay. If it looked good and you were ready to go to the embroidery machine because you just want to click, poof, done, then do it. But if you're going to do something else to this, take the time, satin column, add inclinations, and add at least 2. I add 1 here. I'm going to put 1 in the middle, and I'm going to put 1 here at the bottom. A satin column is the only stitch type that can have more than 1 angle. So that's why I put more than 1. I don't put 50 in this one because it doesn't need it. But I'm directing the stitches to go here, to go here, and to go here so that they turn nice with this shape. Yes, it was already doing that. I put more than 1 in here so that visually, when I right click to stop, so it's going to actually just do it. Visually, whenever I click on that object, I can click on it and I can say, this is a satin column. No other stitch type will have more than 3, more than 2, more than 1. Every other stitch type only has 1. So this is just a double check to say, yeah, I assigned a satin column to it. If you get into this habit, once you start graduating into, say, you've got level 3 and you want to digitize your own alphabet, you never will get the error message saying you are using auto satin because every time you click on the satin column, you're going to put two things in there. So it's just a quick, it's just a way to do that. So that's that. All of these other little guys here, these little dots, these are little freckles on my, let me zoom out here, on my lemon here. I selected them all at one time because I'm gonna make them all satins. So I'm gonna click on the satin column tool and it just did them all at once. Now, just looking at these, at the size that they are, they may look great as little vinyl polka dots. I know for a fact these are going to be too tiny for for stitches. It just is. These, and to prove it, I'm going to go up. Let me zoom in on one of them. Okay, I'm going to turn off 3D so that we can actually see the little stitches here, one from one to the other. I'm going to go to my measuring tool. I'm going to put my measuring, I'm going to pay attention to what it says down here in the corner. Hopefully you can see where my cursor is, way here in the corner. I'm going to put my measuring tool on one side, left click, drag across, and drag it to the other side. And it says it is 1.9, or we'll be generous and say it was 2 millimeters. 2 millimeters at this size. So I know for a fact those are going to be little dorky dots. It's just not going to be useless. It's going to be useless. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select one of them. And I'm going to go back into create mode, because once you're out of select mode, I'm going to go back into create mode so I can see my little shape here. And I'm going to make it a little wider, maybe make it a little taller. They don't have to be perfect circles, because I know from my digitizing experience that circles become ovals, and these are freckles. They can be ovals, it doesn't really matter, but I'm making them bigger so that they're going to actually show up. Let me go put my 3D back on. So while it's selected, I can see that it is down here 3.2, 3.4. So at least it's a little bigger. At 3.5 millimeters is the size of a satin stitch going around an applique, if you need a reference. Now, do I have to do that for all the other ones? No. I just have to do one, because now I can select this one. I'm going to go up here to copy it to my clipboard. I'm going to select this one up here. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to say paste, replace. Boom. Click on this one. Right click on it. Paste, replace. Boom. Click on this one. Right click on it. Paste, replace. Boom. I mean, how easy is that? So when you have something that is duplicated, or something that you're doing over and over again, whoopsie, make sure you click on the last one. Paste, replace. See, now they're all a little bigger. At least I know they're the right size. This guy here, since I had measured that, and I know that's 3.5 millimeters going across, and should I have put the angles in? Yes, I didn't. I was lazy. This one right here, let's take our measuring tool again. Where is it? Measuring tool. Click on one side, click on the other. 2.4 millimeters. So 2.4 mils. That's actually a very skinny line. It's not that skinny. Let me go out here and click off of this here. But it is skinnier than my outline that's here. So it's just something to be aware of. I'm going to go back and I'm going to click on this. I'm going to change it back to the black. So while it's clicked on, I'm going to go to color, click on the color chip. Let me go to my palettes. Oh, and I noticed that I have two blacks in here. One is the thread color black and one is the SVG color. Might as well choose the thread color because the SVG doesn't make anything. But I'm going to select all of my black so that it's all going to be one color. Click on the one color button and make it all that as not all the Robinson Anton color. Click OK. That if I didn't change it all to the same color, the machine would treat it as two different thread colors. So make it all consistent. At this point, I'm like, well, that made a pretty neat class. In fact, I thought about curving the fill, and I was like, but what am I going to do with a 4-inch lemon? Like, you know, it's that outline thing, the satin outline, that's great for cartoon characters. For those of you that are looking to digitize I'm just going to say cartoon characters that have black outlines. Something to keep in mind when you're doing it. Make sure your fills are underneath your outlines. Make sure these outlines are covering enough, because otherwise it's going to have gaps. Guaranteed. Your test so. Doesn't matter about anything else. It's going to have a gap. Okay? Question here. Paste replace, that's always been there. It's just one of those little right-click functions. So when you have anything selected in create mode, okay, make sure you're in create mode. If you click on something and select it and you right click on it, it gives you operations that can be done. Paste over and under is pasting things before and after, but paste replace is just wicked cool. Okay. Got a hiccup there. Okay. At this point, let me get in select mode. This is when I decided, all right, I'm going to turn this into a patch, a tiny patch. So I need to take this guy and make him small. The way that I like to resize, and this is just always something that I do, is I go into select mode, because I can now select the entire design by clicking on it. And if I want to type in an actual size here, I can do that. So for me, when I resize an entire design, that's what I do. However, watch what this was actually wicked cool. Watch what happens when I resize this. I'm going to pull down I resize from center out. So it doesn't matter if you just resize freehand or if you hold down the shift key. Shift key, all it does is resizes from center out. So I'm going to shrink it down. And I'm just kind of watching the size on my status bar. It says selected is 20.7. And I'm going to release. And it didn't do it this time. What the heck? Hold on. Well, it didn't. Okay. You see, you see what happened here? Because I created this in StitchArtist and I used the border stitch on this outline still kept, let me go into create mode, the 3.5 millimeter width. So even though you resized outside of StitchArtist, because it had the StitchArtist objects, it kept that exact same width on it, which is like, well, okay, that was a little surprising. But that's because I used the border tool for that. So, okay, I got a couple other questions here. Elizabeth, you're learning some more. Excellent. Tammy, is the paste replace available in StitchArtist 1? Yes. What's wonderful about the tools in this Embrilliance platform is that they try and build your skill level. So they give you some pretty high powerful tools in level 1 so that you're like, okay, I'm getting it. I'm doing this. I just made this little guy here. I did a paste replace. I fixed out all these little guys and whatnot. So it's like, it's very nice so that you can still use that function in level 2 and level 3. It's not like you have to say, oh, I have to learn something completely new. The only thing that is not in level 1 that I showed so far is, well, first of all, you can't open SVGs in level 1. And second of all, the stitch angle, this little column stitch guy here, you don't have a choice. You have an auto column in level 1. Level 2 lets you put those angles, which is awesome when you're doing those swoopy lettering and curvy things, because that's how you do it. You don't want to let the computer do all the work. Helen has a question here. Oh, okay. If you select more than one freckle, would paste replace do them all at once, or do you have to do one at a time? I don't know. I've never tried that. Yeah, you can try it. Go for it. Maybe well, guess what? We kind of have to do this again so we can try it out. First of all, let's look at this. I got to get rid of this border here. It kept the 3.5 millimeters. I do know that's not going to work. So I went and dropped it down to 1.3 millimeters, which is more than adequate for this. That's a skinny satin, but you got to remember, I am doing a really tiny patch on here. Okay, that's this is only like a little bit bigger than a quarter. So this isn't, all this is doing is an outline. So let's see, question, but these little freckles, they were kind of like they were before, not gonna be seen. So we need to make some adjustments here. So I'm gonna take this guy, I'm gonna make him bigger so that he actually shows. I'm gonna have to move him a little bit so he's further away. Let's do a copy. And let's select the rest of them and see what happens. If you blow up my computer, Helen, why not? Right click, paste replace. It did. Well, that's even cooler. Because first of all, what that did is that was wicked cool. And it didn't make any extra copies. Wow. That's kind of slick. Okay. So in fact, okay, so say I did this one. Let me go and make this guy bigger. A little bit bigger here. And I'm oversizing him because I know what a freckle, based upon my stitch experience, I know that this guy has to be at least 1.5 millimeters wide. Okay, see what I use the little measuring tool to see down the bottom left corner, it says 1.5 millimeters. That's what this guy, if I make that any smaller, it's just gonna put dirt spots. It's not even gonna, it's gonna be just some knots and mess. Ugh. Okay, so get on the measuring tool here. All right, so I have this guy. Let me click on this one and put my 2 angles of inclination in. Right click to end. There I have my little dot. I can select him. Go to copy. Select the rest of them. Go to paste, right click on it. Paste replace. And it paste replaced it with all the little angle guys. Now, that's nice that it did that all at once, because first of all, you're going to have to notice these are kind of getting close together here. So you want, you want to be able to spread them out a little bit, because you're changing the graphic. What worked in vinyl or print didn't work or isn't going to work for thread. Now, before I do anything else, let me go to view mode and turn on my jump stitches. Okay. I wanted to do that because I want to show you guys a few things here. These red lines show you the jump stitches between the objects in what we've created. So I can see that it's gonna, this guy here starts and stops its outline. I haven't mucked around with my underlay at all, but what I would do for this underlay is I actually turned off all underlay when I made it a patch. I didn't have any underlay at all. No, I did have edge run. Sorry, I put edge run on this little satin guy. My underlay for this fill, I go to my underlay properties. I had contour and perpendicular. I upped my density up to about 30. The reason is because I'm turning this into a patch, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So I did want to mention that. This one here, what does this have underlay on? Boom. Turn that off. He doesn't need underlay. This one will probably have to get made a little wider so that he doesn't get embedded into our fabric. Although he did okay with mine, but I did things a little differently on mine, so whatever. The reason I wanted to show the jump stitches is because you notice how close these are together. And what if you have a PE 770 that doesn't trim jump stitches? You kind of want to make these work so that those jumps are either as far apart as possible, so it does trim, or make them in a logical spot so that, and the way you say logical spot, this one is, let's see how they stitch. It's going to stitch this one first up here. It's going to jump down to this one. So you have this big long jump stitch. Then the next one, it looks like it's going to jump over to this one, which is a real tiny dorky jump stitch. And this one is actually going to start stitching on top of that little tiny jump stitch. So if you have a PE 770 that doesn't trim jump stitches, that sort of long jump stitch just became a lot shorter. So what you might want to do is order these stitches so that they either are hidden and you don't care that someone can, that they're seeing. So if you notice this one, where is he? That's this one right here, and then this one right here. Whoops, this guy right here. If these two stitch one right after another, and you have that little tiny jump in between the two of them, so that's this one, Like this. See that little tiny dumpy drawer sticks? No one's going to pay attention to that one. And then this one, which comes down here, that's connecting from here. If you make that jump stitch as small as possible, it's actually going to, yes, you see it, but who cares? So either you make them far apart and by making them far apart, you reorganize. So let's see. We'll stitch this guy first, column. And then the next thing that stitches, not that one. Let's stitch this guy. Whoopsie. Uh-oh. I froze. Sorry, guys. Okay, let's move this one up there. So I'll move this guy all the way up here. So it's actually going to stitch this one and then this one. And then it's going to jump back up here. And maybe I'll stitch this one next. Whoopsie. This one next. So this one will jump all the way back up here. Whoopsie. Anyway, I'm making a mess here. My mouse is jumping because of internet connection, whatnot here. So moving these around so that these dashed lines are longer will force your embroidery machine to trim if it trims. Okay, keeping these little tiny short ones, if they're too short, your machine won't trim even if it trims jump stitches. It just won't. As you saw, see that these guys here, these are not going to trim. So they need to be reorganized, stitched in different orders, and make those jump stitches as long as possible so that that's just what I would do. Okay, so we've decided that we're making this into a patch, and I know that these are going to be stitched on water-soluble stabilizer with thread. So there's going to be nothing holding them together. So the way I did this is I had my little lemon guy here. This is part of Merrily Patches. So I went to Utility, said Add Patch Edge, and I chose Circle. Now, the way the circle works is that it puts a circle on your screen. Okay, you can take that patch and hold down your shift key and move it in closer to the edge. So if you wanted to make a smaller circle, which is what I did, put it that, you can change the size of that circle. Okay, now the patch on the interactive, that's the circle guy here, and it's automatically going to do it. Let me make it just a little bit bigger. I'm holding the shift key down so that it resizes center out. Resizing. You gotta watch the resizing video. It's the same for everything. Ooh, I have new comments I might have missed here. Okay. Carlissa, hold on. I've got some stuff here. You haven't seen Paste Replace with StitchArtist 3. Do you need to update? No, you just need to only have an object selected. You probably have more than one. I don't know. It's there. If you might have a node selected, you need to have the entire object selected to get the paste replaced. So while I have the patch guy selected on the interactive tab, I need to go to here where it says create using fill. And that puts that fill stitch behind there. Now, it does that. There's two options here. One has it also adds a position stitch if you want the position stitch. That's just a running stitch. I don't. There's reasons why you'd want to do that. I uncheck it. When I am doing my fill, I do not need a position stitch. Okay, maybe if you were doing reverse applique and you had a hole in your fabric and you're putting water soluble underneath it, you need to know where the position stitch is to cut the fabric away. I don't know. I'm just giving you an idea. I usually just uncheck the position stitch so I don't have to worry about it. Next thing I do is I go to my color tab and I change this to something that I really would rather have. So something closer to what I was working in on my design. Click OK, just so that I could actually see it. That applique material, that orangey color just didn't do it for me. You could change the color of the top stitch if you want, just by clicking on that, if that's something that you want to play with. Colors, they're not that important really to me, but it was just, if you want to get something to look right on your screen, it's kind of nice to work on that. One thing I didn't want to pay attention to is the distance of the edge to this design as far as shrinking it goes. So on my lemon BE, I have a little tiny little spot right here. Okay, just a little tiny bit. And it kind of kisses on the patch itself, but that was just a little tiny spot that's there. Okay, so on this one, to create that exact same thing, I would want to make this guy just a little bit bigger. Maybe just a little bit bigger. I probably should check the actual size of what the other one is, but I didn't make this one the exact same size. This is closer to what it was. Now, you don't want to put a hole in this background, okay? Why? Because this background, this light green here, is freestanding. If you delete this lemonade guy, so let me hit Command X to get rid of him. This will stitch fabric. You can't put, if you put a hole in this, whatever you put in that hole has to be freestanding as well. And so let me put that pasty back guy in there. This guy isn't freestanding. If you stitch this lemon all by itself on water-soluble stabilizer and you rinsed it away, you'll have knots. That's probably not what you're going for. So let's look at our density map here at the top. Okay, the density map is a StitchArtist function. It's also in DRK, but I digitized this guy. Let's look at what happens. There's a lot of red on there. I don't care. It has to. It's freestanding. In order for this to not fall apart, there has to be red around it. But do you notice that? And there's red around the satin stitch edge because that's, you know exactly where that red is. That's where the fill is being covered by the satin, because if it's not, you're going to have a gap. So if you get rid of these red spots in this, you're going to have holes and you're going to have spots in your see-through and stuff's going to mess up. So looking at this isn't saying, oh, this is too dense, I need to reduce my density. No, this is perfectly fine. This took 11 minutes to stitch and I have a cute little patch, and that's the only way you can make it freestanding. However, that is why, because this base, this base of this patch is freestanding and completely stable, whatever I put on it really doesn't need to have much underlay. So that's why when I went to this fill and I went to my underlay setting, yes, I have contour, yes, I have perpendicular, but I upped the density to a higher number. I did that more to put color underneath because I didn't want bleed. I didn't want the blue background to bleed through into my lemon. If this was a black bowling ball on a white background, you could get away with not putting as much underlay. It's whatever. This wasn't that much. This didn't bust any needles. It wasn't hard to do or anything like that. The satin border that was going around here, okay, on its underlay, I changed it just to edge run. If I uncheck that edge run, I stitched this with an edge run underlay, but if you do that and you look at your density map, you might notice, if you're being really picky, that there's less red spots around here because there's going to be less running stitches in between that section here. There's such a little difference that it didn't make a difference, okay? Will it stitch out okay? I don't know. We do a test sew. Whenever someone posts a 3D visualization saying, will this stitch out okay? Lisa Shaw's answer is going to be, I don't know. What does your test sew look like? You have to do a test sew to tell if it's going to work out right. My test sew here had the underlay on it. It stitched out okay. I'm not going to break it. It worked. There was nothing for me to adjust on this. I only go back and adjust things if there's a reason to. Do I want to make it less dense? I pick my battles. Okay. Should you put a fabric under patches to make them sturdy? This guy's actually pretty darn sturdy. I will use a product called Heat Seal and I don't think I have any handy that I can show you. Not that you'd be able to see anyway. But on the back of my patches, I put, it's called Heat Seal, and it's a clear plastic that you iron it on, and it fuses it. I guess like Ultra Heat and Bond Ultra. I don't use that. I use Heat Seal. It's from Amazon. Was where I got it. Or you can get it from All Stitch or Coleman. It's their patch backing. And that, especially on the bigger patches, it completely stiffens them up and makes them iron on. So if I'm doing a thread patch like this, and the reason I did the little guys as thread patches is because they have 6 colors, and I just have to hit start and let it go, and it uses up my little scrap stabilizer. There was no need for me to to do fabric. Had I done fabric, I'd want to pre-cut all those, because my idea of a good time is you know what that little dorky hoop is, right? That's a little 2x4 hoop. Trying to get your scissors in there, so you'd have to pre-cut all those ahead of time. Not my idea of a fun time. This was just as easy to do these little guys. So it depends on what you're going for, you know. But I pretty much, on the back of all my patches, I put that heat seal stuff. And it stiffens them up nice, gives them some body, and you can iron them on afterwards, because it's like a glue, so you can press them in place. So, let's see. Julie says, "Can I move the patch edge to stitch last?" Yes. In this instance, I wouldn't, because obviously, you want registration to be correct. So, but you can either, if you go and look at on the project blog last year, the Snowflake Coaster project that moved the patch edge and made multiple copies, and the patch edge stitches all by itself at the end. So, Roger says, "You sound like me. Thread patches are so satisfying watching them build from nothing. There was nothing there, and now we have a patch." And then you wash it away, and it's like amazing that it does these things. Okay, I have the tomato guy here for a reason, because I knew I wasn't gonna have time to digitize the tomato. Let me go back into the software here, and let me open up my tomato, because he has, digitizing patch. There's my tomato. Open. Okay. Do you see that tomato top? Do you see how it's actually quite muddy looking? Let's go back to where we are here. This is my actual test sew, and can you see it's actually got a lot more green in it than that actual preview one that was there? Kind of funny thing was, I was futzing so hard with the top to make sure that the black overlapped the green, because I was going for the same style. I couldn't just put that green on it all by itself, because then it wouldn't match all the other ones. They all had black outlines around it. So I was really futzing with that, and I could tell the only part that I have registration issues is the easy part, the part I didn't double check, and that's around the bottom of the tomato. You can sort of see a little bit of on these sides and thing, and that's because I wasn't paying attention to that stuff. I was futzing so much with the top part, and in the software, it really looks pretty muddy looking, that green and the black. So make sure when you're doing your final test sews or your final looking at your stuff, pay attention to even the easy stuff, because I didn't pay attention to that. So Bill's on, as far as doing the water soluble stabilizer, do I soak the patch or just wet the edges? Normally I just wet the edges, because who cares? It's got so much bobbin thread covering it. When I put the heat seal on it, it's basically ironing it to the thread that's on the bottom. When I did a whole bunch, because I got the Durkee patch frame. I don't know if you guys have seen that yet. I'll have to show. I have some photographs I need to post of it. It's a patch frame, so it's not a hoop. It's got 4 bars on it, so you can put stuff really tight in it. And I put some water-soluble stabilizer just to see if that would hold it, and did my patches. And I did 16 little intricate patches, which I thought would make registration. I did have a registration problem pulling in my 8x12 hoop, but in the patch frame, the first one was just as taut as the last one. So it was a really cool feature. With that one, I would pretty much just dump the whole thing in water and let it all dissolve. Can you cut them all out and dampen around the edges? Sure. Lisa's lazy. So, oh, let's see. You're going to have to try to find sarcastic images to give out to people who like Girl Scout patches. Absolutely. These could be really fun. Merit badges. So, Roger's already started making embroidery milestone merit badges. Sounds like a great idea. I mean, they're fun. They're cute. You can easily hot glue them, or not hot glue them, heat seal them onto a backpack or onto a tote bag. Add a magnet to them, put them on the fridge. So Lots of fun. Just a lot of things to keep in mind when you're digitizing something this small. That was the whole point of what I was working with this. And not to be afraid of the layers. Okay, 3 layers of stitches is not a bad idea. I mean, these little stitch guys, the tomato one has less than 6,000 stitches in it for the little patch guy. Is that a lot of stitches? Absolutely. It's freestanding. There's no fabric in it. If I had a regular embroidery design that was stitched on fabric that had that many stitches in it, yeah, that'd be a problem. But this is freestanding, so it has to have a lot of stitches. There's just no way of doing it. So adjust your underlays to compensate. I used my underlays for color. That is why they have. So I did not have bleed through of the background bleeding through the top color. All right, guys, I got to finish packing. It was great to chat with you tonight about doing this. Have some fun. Play with your software. Just think, any design you could take and patch it if you have Merrily patches. It's that easy. There's lots of videos. When I say, oh, check out my videos, I'm usually referring to the Embrilliance YouTube channel because I do most of the videos on the Embrilliance YouTube channel. So it's youtube.com/Embrilliance, and there's a playlist on the font collections and Merrily patches that has all that stuff in it. So, all right. Thanks for joining me tonight. Remember, you can catch this again as a replay. There's over 2 years worth of videos up there to watch. Have a great evening. I'll talk to you later. Bye.